So good morning to all of you in Toronto, and thank you for joining us at the Bank of Montreal Canadian Immigrant Virtual Fair for Eastern Canada. The Canadian Immigrant Virtual Fairs, Eastern and Western region, are presented to you by the Bank of Montreal. We're thrilled to have everyone join us, and we hope that you're enjoying the fair so far. It began at 10 a.m. today, East Coast time. So I would like to welcome our opening panel discussion speakers. So this opening panel is on immigration and integration perspectives from key leaders. We've invited key leaders from different fields who will be sharing their own unique perspectives on the topic. And we hope their perspectives will help newcomers and immigrants better integrate socially, economically, and culturally on their journey as they settle in their new home in Canada. So thank you, Dr. Gina, Cody, Bruce Poontech, Stephen Meurrens, and Ada Wong for making time to join us today and for your valuable perspectives. So during the discussion, we will be asking questions specific to the panelists' expertise and industries, followed by a general discussion with all panelists for their input. Finally, we'll open the floor to questions from the viewers. If you have questions for Gina, Bruce, Stephen, or Ada, please feel free to type them in the chat box. And we will be getting to your questions towards the end of this presentation. You can also email us at info@canadianimmigrant.ca. And please note that this session will be recorded. So let's get started, shall we? I would like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Gina Cody. Dr. Cody holds a master's and doctorate in building engineering from Concordia University. She has more than 30 years of professional practice as an engineer, corporate executive, and principal shareholder of an engineering firm. She has received numerous awards, and in 2018, Concordia University renamed their Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science to the Gina Cody School of Engineering and Computer Science. What an honor. You can also find information about Dr. Cody's journey on our website, currently on the homepage. Our website is canadianimmigrant.ca, as all of you know. So Gina, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I'll jump right into the first question. What challenges did you have to address as a business leader, especially as a woman business leader in a new country and in a male-dominated field like engineering and construction, and how did you deal with them?
Okay, I started in this business over 4 decades ago, so time has changed. So my journey may be a bit different than those coming today to this industry. Having said that, I don't believe that it has changed that drastically. My biggest challenge as an engineer in consulting and engineering, and mainly in construction, was being the only woman in the room. That was always my challenge. It has changed, but still it is a very male dominated area of practice. So how did I deal with it? I tried to make a negative into a positive. It may be a cliche, but it is really true. You can turn anything that is not working for you and turn it around to make for you if you want to succeed in life. You have no other choice. So when I went to meetings and when I was in giving conferences and so on, being the only woman in the room, I knew the eyes are on me. So what that mean is it meant that I had to be correct. I were not allowed to let their biases overtake them because they believe that women don't belong to engineering. So I had to be always right. I had to be on top of my toes to make sure that I give the right answer, prepare myself, and don't make mistake. So most important thing is we cannot afford to make mistake as a woman when we are in a male-dominated area of practice. Having said that, when you do the right thing, you say the right thing, they remember you. That's how you make that negative to the positive.
Great, thank you. So our next question for you is, you've recently, well in 2018, made a $15 million donation to your school Concordia University. Tell us what prompted this generosity and what do you hope to achieve from this?
When I came to Canada in 1979, it was during the revolution in Iran. And for those of you, a lot of you may not have been born even then, but there was a complete chaos. Things were very difficult in my home country. You couldn't bring money with you, for example. So I had only $2,000 in my pocket. I came to Montreal to go to do my master's at the time. I was supposed to go to another university. My brother had arranged this meeting with me and this professor at Concordia named Cedric Marsh. So I went to see him. I arrived during the Labor Day weekend. So on the Tuesday morning, I go to see him. And after an hour of meeting, he looks at my mark, he interviews me, and he says, "Why would you go anywhere else? Come to Concordia, we give you scholarship." That was a pivotal moment in my life. It really got changed. That young woman that was terrified of how am I going to support myself? How am I going to survive in this country? All of a sudden got changed. It became comfortable. I had a scholarship. I started actually, I went the same day to Immigration Canada, got my work permit, which was, you can't do that these days, takes a long time. I started working in the afternoon at the university's lab. And at that time, I took it for granted, to be honest. I didn't think much of it. I thought I was a very lucky person. And then later on, I realized what a fortunate thing happened to me. What a life-changing moment I had at that first day of my encounter with this professor and this university. So I felt when I can do it, I will do it. So that was the whole notion behind me giving back, because I felt someone did it for me. I need to do it for others. I have to pave. And my really message to those who are coming to Canada, just remember, whoever helps you or paves the road for you, you have an obligation to make a smoother surface for those coming after you. We did not get where we are with our own efforts. There have been thousands and millions of people who sacrifice for us to get where we are. So it is upon us to pave the road for others. What do I want to leave as a legacy? Two things. One is, I want people to realize immigrants are contributors to this society. We are not just coming to this country and taking advantage of the resources and services that are here. We are giving back. And many, many immigrants in Canada, it's a country of immigrants, are doing the same and way more than I have done or I will be doing. But also I wanted to send a message to young women and girls that engineering and computer science is for women as well. That whole notion of me being the only woman in the room, I want to end that. And that was having the faculty named after a woman. It wasn't my name. It wasn't the naming of me as a person. It was the gender issue for me.
Great. And I've actually seen Gina in action. The first time I met Gina was at a Newcomers women event focused on newcomer women organized in Toronto. And she came in, she inspired everyone. It was amazing to connect with her there. And we're happy to have her here. So Gina, in a couple of minutes, our last question at this point for you is based on your own experiences as an immigrant, business leader, and a professional. How can Canada maximize immigrant potential?
As a professional person, and I see a lot of immigrants coming to Canada as a professional, we give them immigration papers because they are professionals, they are engineers, they are doctors, they are pharmacists. But what we fail as a country to pave the road before their arrival. I want the whole process of their certification and their degrees get accepted prior to that. And Canada can be a pioneer on that. Or I know, for example, in the engineering profession, is very difficult with people arriving with engineering degree. We accept their degrees, our universities accept them, but our governing bodies, which each province has got its own professional governing body, each have different requirements, and they have a lot of obstacles for new immigrants to get that. One of them may be Canadian experience, but they should also pave the road for other things if they want them to take additional courses, if they want them, so they prepare them before they come. So I think Canada has to do a lot more rather than bringing these professionals and putting a block in front of them, smooth the passage and their arrival to the country.
Great. Thank you so much, Gina. It's always so inspiring to talk to you and hear about your journey. So next up, we have Bruce Poontech. Bruce is the founder of G Adventures, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and author. He has a number of accolades to his name. He has received numerous awards and recognitions, including being named as one of Canada's most admired CEOs in 2018, and has also been the recipient of the 2020 Top 25 Canadian Immigrant Awards. You can actually find videos of Bruce on our website at canadianimmigrant.ca and learn more about his journey in our magazine featuring the top 25 winners that went out in the summer. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. So you are a very successful entrepreneur, leader, philanthropist, and the founder of G Adventures, the world's largest small group adventure company in the world, with 28 offices worldwide, hosting 2 million, I think, travelers per year. Or is it 20 million?
No, it's 250,000.
200.
I wish I was hosting 20 million. That would be great.
Sorry, I'm 250,000 travelers per year. What sort of influence has coming to Canada as a young child with your family had in your entrepreneurial journey?
I think, there's many things how Canada's influenced, my family and of course my parents. But I think it's the opportunities that we have in Canada, the opportunities to, and as well, I think being an immigrant and coming to Canada, the support that was offered to my family when we first came here was something that gave us the confidence that we could be anything and that we could do anything, and those opportunities. And I think when you come here, just being an immigrant, especially when your parents sacrifice so much for to give you the gift of opportunity, you're constantly thinking, trying to make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities. I think immigrants have a very different view on work, and they have a very different view on because their parents sacrifice so much. I always say that the immigrants in my organization, they have a fifth gear that others don't. But Canada is, as a country, is welcoming to immigrants, and it's actually getting better now. But what it offers is the ability to think that you can do anything, and that ultimately, as an entrepreneur, you have to have that confidence that you can take an idea and make a business of it. And most people around the world don't have that opportunity. If you have an idea, it's just an idea. But in Canada, you can have an idea, and you can make it real. You have that opportunity. It takes a lot of work, but ultimately you have to make that initial decision, and that moment of confidence that you need is supported by being here in Canada, that you can make that idea a business.
Great. What challenges did you have to face on your entrepreneurial journey, and how did you deal with them?
Well, any entrepreneur has many challenges. I was raised in Calgary and grew up in Calgary. I moved here 30 years ago now, in 1990. And my challenges were like any other entrepreneur starting out. My parents arrived here with 7 children in Canada, so they had their own struggles getting started in a new society. And then I moved to Canada with $800, thinking I can change the world. So my challenges were financial to begin with, like every entrepreneur. I don't think my story is unique there. And then when I had an idea, it's then getting the support of a business community that didn't understand what I wanted to do. So I wanted to run tours. I wanted to run sustainable tours. I wanted to do community development while doing tours, and in 1990 that wasn't even heard of. So support from banks or traditional lending wasn't available to me. I applied for even government programs where, you know, they were giving students loans for starting, you know, lawn mowing companies and, you know, house painting businesses. And because my business wasn't understood, there was a lack of support because it wasn't easily explained. So I think, and so having such an innovative idea back then was actually a challenge because it wasn't simple and straightforward, because I wanted to start something that had never been done before. So, I mean, the traditional challenges, and, you know, as we went global, so G Adventures, you know, we sell in, you know, people from 160 countries book trips with us every year. So we're truly a global brand. So once I started going internationally, we started selling across the world. You know, you know, being so young, I was very young. I was 22, 23 years old when I started, and in a very old industry like tourism. So that was a challenge. And then being a person of color also posed its own challenges when you're trying to negotiate across a business table with people that, you know, that don't look at you in the same ways. You look at, you know, you look at yourself as having just a great idea, and suddenly there's walls put up, you know, put up for you that aren't there for other people.
Thank you. And I just want to say that Gina and I have both taken your trips, and I found it to be a great experience.
Thank you.
So based on your own experiences, how do you think immigrant potential be maximized by Canada?
Well, I think that we have, as a nation, I think we have to, you know, recognize the power of immigrants. First of all, that's a broader decision, but we have to support them at a much younger age. I think that I think that the time that you can support immigrants is when they don't need it. I think that we have a tendency to support immigrants when they don't need the help anymore, and we have to actually support them when they actually need it. Sorry, when they actually need it. And that's when you can access young people too. I think young people and young immigrants have a bigger struggle while their parents are struggling. And finding programs in which we can engage younger kids earlier, I think is the best. I think it's the best thing that we can do. Just like we look at early childhood development when we have you know, families here, and that's such a serious industry. I think immigrants should be looked in the same way. We engage families, you know, as best we can, but I think we can do better engaging the young people. At G Adventures, for instance, we do the Christmas party here. We've run the Christmas party for 10 years called Christmas in the Community for immigrant families that are in downtown Toronto, that are kids that are over 5, that don't qualify for the city party for kids under 5. We've been doing that as our staff Christmas party for, I think this is maybe our 11th or 12th year that we're doing this year. And this year we can't get together, so we're doing home deliveries, and so all the staff in my office get together to do that. But it's always been about engaging young people and getting them to understand what a great opportunity they have being in Canada, and the decisions that their parents made and the sacrifices that their parents made at a younger age, giving them that confidence and that support as soon as you can, because they're often forgotten when you support families. You're muted, sorry.
Sorry, I live in a condo. Unmute myself. Okay. I live in a condo and somebody was doing vacuuming outside. So sorry about that. So thank you for your comments, Bruce, and for sharing your experiences. So our next speaker coming up is Stephen Meurrens. Stephen is an immigration lawyer with Larley Rosenberg in Vancouver and has written the immigration law column for Canadian Immigrant for over a decade now. So Stephen, thank you for joining us. We know it's early in the morning for you in Vancouver, and thank you for that, for joining us. So the first question to you is, can you provide a brief overview of opportunities that currently exist for newcomers and immigrants to move to Canada? Can you specifically address opportunities for skilled immigrants, since that continues to be the largest source of permanent resident admissions to Canada?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest source category right now, or the biggest program, continues to be Express Entry, which is an application intake system for skilled workers. Those who follow the program know that Since 2015, Canada has ranked essentially all economic or most economic immigrants against each other using a 1,200 point ranking grid. And the points right now, even though we're in the midst of a global pandemic, which initially caused the points to come down a little bit, are at historic highs of around 470. And a couple of years ago, one needed, in this ranking system, which is based on age, education, work experience, language abilities, whether they have a job offer, increasingly whether they're bilingual, where they were educated, where their family is. The current points threshold is around 470 points. And what that means is that people looking to become permanent residents need to A, monitor this system, and B, do things to enhance their points in the ranking system. And the biggest factor, honestly, that I see making a difference for people, because it's hard to, well, you can't really change your age to make it younger, and getting education, further education can take some time, is language, which is often the make or break for people. But in addition to Express Entry, I think it's important to look at other programs. There are self-employed opportunities for individuals. Each province gets to nominate between a couple thousand to around 5,500 or to 6,000 immigrants per year, and they all have their own criteria, so people should monitor that. And then during COVID, and I think even after COVID, there's going to be an increased focus on the government just launching pilot projects. So during COVID alone, there have been pilot projects. Now there's one, they're talking about a specific program for people from Hong Kong. There's been a program launched for out-of-status construction workers in Toronto. There's been a program launched for refugee claimants who have worked in the healthcare field since the start of COVID. So there are all these extremely niche targeted programs that people should monitor. And honestly, just if immigration is something that is of interest to someone and they want to look for opportunities outside of the Express Entry ranking system, to just monitor the IRCC website, because they announce programs almost on a weekly basis that are extremely specialized.
Great, and they can also be followed on their social media platforms as well, right?
Yeah, there's me and a few other lawyers who are pretty active on Twitter. Actually, the best resource to follow on Twitter probably wouldn't, I mean, you can definitely follow me, and for sure, but it would be the Canadian Bar Association Twitter account. They actually have someone who volunteers for the organization, who also works at my firm, but it's not affiliated with our firm, the Twitter account, that just posts immigration updates, and that's the CBA Twitter account. CBA stands for Canadian Bar Association.
And what is your handle, just quickly, on Twitter?
SMEURRENS. So it's first initial, last name.
Okay, great. And IRCC also has a Twitter account and social channels. So that would also be a great resource, right?
They do. They don't post the provincial program. So IRCC on the Twitter account sticks to IRCC.
Okay.
CBA will get into the provincial programs as well.
Okay. So I'll go to the next question. We'd like to hear your thoughts on how you believe immigrant potential can be maximized by the Canadian immigration system. What sort of processes and programs can be put into place to help skilled immigrants come to Canada?
So this is, I'm going to present kind of the current dilemma that's facing Canada's immigration system. There's two parts to this question. So the first part of my answer will be the overall situation right now, which is Canada has no limit, though the government doesn't set a limit on the number of people who can come as international students. And it doesn't set a limit on the number of people who can come as foreign workers. The private sector and the education sector kind of dictate those numbers. And there is a limit, and there's quotas and there's levels plannings for the number of people who can arrive as permanent residents. So you may have read in the news with much fanfare, although part of it is to fill a huge drop in immigration levels this year because of COVID, that the government is going to try to welcome about 400,000 people as permanent residents in 2021. That includes principal applicants and their accompanying family members. This year, well, maybe not this year, but last year and certainly next year, once the schools are back up, Canada welcomed, or about, I think the stats were around 400,000 international students. That doesn't include their family members. And they had about 400,000 to 500,000 people arrive on work permits. Also doesn't include their family members. So right now, each year, you have about 800,000-ish principal applicants arriving in Canada with temporary resident status, where they're going to work. In the case of, well, probably almost all of them will work. They'll pay taxes. And then there'll be about 400,000 people, so about 250 to 275,000 principal applicants who can actually qualify for permanent residence. And this gap is growing, and it's probably the biggest challenge to Canada's immigration system. I personally think, and it's something that it would take a very bold initiative, a very bold politician to do it. Like, it's kind of that if you're good enough to work and stay here, you're good enough, why not just make the ability permanent? Like, I don't fully understand why we can't just be granting permanent residence automatically to people who've been here a certain amount of time working. I don't know why they all have to be ranked against each other using somewhat arbitrary criteria. And I would almost go like the first recommendation that I would make is making the Canadian experience class kind of what it was when it was first envisioned back in 2008-9, which is if you have a year, you know, people who only know the system now will just look at express entry in this huge ranking system and think it's really hard to stay here. When the Canadian experience class was envisioned, it was 1 year of skilled Canadian work experience. You pass a language test, you can immigrate. And I would just go back to that model and take the Canadian experience class completely out of the ranking systems. Second thing that I would do is more open work permits. I think the fact that foreign nationals are tied to employers is ripe for abuse. And it also causes weird issues where if you hire someone, say, as an engineer, you know, if we go back to the first speaker who came here, went to school, started an engineering degree, rose through the ranks to lead an engineering company. If she had been a foreign worker for that whole time, trying to get through the ranking system, every time the company would have had to recruit to see if it could have filled the person before, to fill the position before a raise could have been possible, before a promotion could have been possible. And I think it's just frankly ridiculous, and there needs to be a more flexible open work permit system.
Thank you for that. And in just a minute, you've talked about study permits and temporary work permits. What is the potential for them to transition to permanent residency in just a minute? Thank you.
The potential, first of all, plan early, start early. As soon as you see that you're eligible for a program, apply for it, because the points go up quick, programs close, and the potential really depends on the province. And all I would say is plan early, and possibly, as you know, frustrating and counterintuitive as it may seem, to if you're a foreign worker, to plan that initial year or two of your career with the goal being that it maximizes points, because certain jobs get more points.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Great information. Our final panelist is Ada Wong. Ada is the VP of Marketing, Communications, and Digital Strategies at ACCESS Employment. She holds a Master's of Political Science and Communications from the University of Toronto and has graduated summa cum laude from York University with a Bachelor of Arts. Ada leads several transformative technology projects, bringing together digital technology and traditional human services for ACCESS. So Ada, welcome. Our first question is, working in a settlement agency, what are common challenges that you see immigrants face in their settlement journey, especially skilled immigrants and professionals, and how can they deal with them?
Thank you. I think some of the most common challenges we see, or the most common challenge, is that many immigrants are arriving in Canada essentially without their social network, without their professional network. And this is something that they may have had as a professional or as a member of a community in their home country. They're arriving in a brand new country without these connections. And I think that is what distinguishes the challenge for newcomer immigrants, especially in the area of employment, in connecting with the support they need. We all know that mentorship is important, networks and who you know is important. And it's also a very valuable way to gather experience and knowledge indirectly out of the education system about how to work and how things work in Canada. So I think this is a primary challenge, but it's also definitely something that you can work on. And with technology, with LinkedIn, with people being connected across the world and online right now, that's something I know many people are open to connections, open to mentoring and meeting with people for coffee chats. So I think that's something that is really important. The second challenge we see very often is navigating the services and settlement organizations that are available, and even knowing that they're available. And depending on the community you're in Ontario, in the GTA, there are many organizations that can help across the full spectrum of the settlement journey. And so I know that in the GTA, we have strong efforts to make sure that organizations are working kind of in a one-stop shop type of style, where if you get to one location or one organization for support, you are referred to other sources of help that you might need to make sure that you're settling well. And I think that's something that we could do better in the future, that information provision piece, and letting newcomers know what's out there, what's available, and what's right for them.
Great. And would you like to highlight some specific programs and initiatives that newcomers and immigrants can access that can help them with their journey? You could talk in general, but feel free to mention a couple of programs from your organizations as well.
And I think just being that employment is something top of mind. I think you mentioned professionals and immigrant professionals arriving in Canada. I wanted to highlight that there are many sector-specific or bridging programs available right now that support professionals from specific sectors, for example, engineering or finance, or supply chain. And these are all sectors in Canada that are high demand and are looking for professionals. And so what these programs do is just bridge that distance between international experience, which we know is very valuable, to the Canadian context. So how are these sectors different? How are they similar? How do they work in Canada? And a lot of these programs, especially the ones that we offer at ACCESS, are attached and connected directly to industry. So we have employer partners who are ready to provide advice and work directly to make sure the programs are relevant. And these programs exist all over Canada and definitely should be looked into. And as a support, they are very successful in helping people move to where they need to be and providing the supports for professionals to get to where they need to be. And then also wanted to highlight that the settlement organizations and the communities that you're in, seek them out. And there are a broad spectrum of supports available, housing, language, education, and anything that you need. It's a search online. It's a preparatory kind of activity, but these services are really relevant and very community specific. And in that context, I think it could be very helpful for newcomers who are arriving.
Thank you. And based on your experiences with ACCESS and in the settlement sector, how do you think immigrant potential can be maximized by Canada?
I think I wanted to highlight that perhaps the biggest way is to build greater collaboration directly with industry. And I think with employers that across Canada are looking for talent, are hiring in specific areas, there are shortages, we know, in some sectors where, you know, they can't fill the roles, they can't fill the talent. So I think there's a lot of room to work closely with industry, identify those needs, and align them with overall immigration goals. And we also know that there are a number of professionals and immigrants across Canada who aren't able to find work in their field, but have expertise in the fields that are still hiring. So I think there's greater alignment and room for greater alignment in that area. I think secondly, there's some new programs and supports for supporting immigrants pre-arrival. So this is when they're still overseas, they haven't actually landed in Canada yet, but might have their status. And I think this is, that preparation piece is something that's really important. Knowing that it's available, knowing the information is available, and what to do ahead of arriving. It gives everybody that head start and that preparation ahead of time to get their head around what they need to do once they arrive. And in some cases, these services are even successful in securing employment for individuals before they arrive. So just wanted to highlight a greater investment in that area would be really significant and would make that difference. And then finally, a greater investment in technology. I think there's an opportunity to use what we have in terms of AI, knowledge sharing databases, to really synchronize what we're doing across the country, within cities, within even communities. Within the settlement sector, I think one of the pieces is just being able to navigate everything that's available and all the programs that are available. So I think having that in a more readily accessible format, using technology, using that informational provision aspect is going to be really important as an investment.
Thank you for that. So next up, I'd like to pose, let's say, one question. I'm looking at the time here for each speaker before we get to the Q&A session. So if you have any questions for Gina, Bruce, Steve, or Ada, feel free to type it in the chat feature. If we don't get to your questions, we will forward on the questions. Just email us at info@canadianimmigrant.ca. So Gina, let's start with you. What personal attributes do you believe will support newcomers and immigrants integrate better into their new home and facilitate their success in Canada?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. That's why it took me a couple of seconds. The whole matter of getting really integrated is the getting involved in other communities. Immigrants have this tendency when they come, they stick to their own group. That kind of stops them from their language improving. I think the language is one of the most important things to become part of the society, become more sociable. I think social skills is one of the biggest attributes for anyone who is seeking job. So that social skills is something that you need to work on. So as a person that, whether you're a newcomer or before coming, you need to improve on your language, social skills. And when you're here, you need to mingle with other nationalities, try to get networking going on. These days with social media, you can participate in different platforms, webinars, Zoom sessions. So these are all there for everyone to work on. Start working on your CV and the resumes before you arrive. Try to polish it as well as you can. And finally, I think the most important thing is pursuing knowledge. I always insist on that. Take courses that really helps you in your area of your practice. It doesn't have to be a PhD or a master's or whatever. You can take a diploma, you can take 2-3 month courses, but try to improve your knowledge on your area of practice. And now with online courses, I think it would be very, very important and also much easier than it used to be.
Thank you for that. Bruce, same question. What personal attributes do you believe will support newcomers and immigrants integrate better?
I think it's along the same lines. I mean, the personal attributes are, you know, keeping an open mind and being able to fully integrate. And I think there's two opportunities and two levels of opportunity for Canada, which is, you know, the initial parents that make the decision to come. And so we're trying to find employment for them. But the real benefit is the next generation. The next generation that's going to have a chance to grow up in Canada and contribute to society in a positive way. And I think those two groups are the opportunities that we have, and the unique different attributes. So, you know, parents have a real struggle to integrate and, you know, find their way in a new society and a new culture. And what Gina was saying is absolutely true. Going outside of your communities, socializing outside, using social media, whatever it takes to get outside of your community to better integrate, will in the long term will serve your family and the country. And then the younger generation, they need support and confidence to go to school, get an education. You know, they have different challenges, and I think it's important that we understand those different challenges. I think young people need a completely different set of skills when they're coming to a new country, and their parents are struggling to get a job and survive, and they need complex problem-solving skills when they're trying to just go to school and, you know, learn for the first time in a different language. I said it when I spoke earlier about just confidence. You need a level of confidence, and you have to find that somewhere. Your parents naturally normally supply that for you, but when they're struggling, there's, you know, we can offer support there, or we should offer support there.
Thank you for that. And Stephen, your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with what everyone has said so far. I'm going to add, because I get approached a lot from people who are struggling to find employment, to either take a webinar or a course on how to put together a resume, or just learn what the norm in your industry is. Because I find that we help companies with recruitment for foreign worker purposes, and resume standards seem to vary very greatly around the world. And whenever we see a resume, like, I just feel bad when you see a resume from someone who's got, you know, a 10-page resume when the norm is 2 pages in the industry. It's on blue paper instead of white. They have their photo on it. These things, from an employer perspective, it's out of the norm. And because of that, the resume will probably get looked over. And also just not in the resume putting something to explain briefly what a company that you may have worked for is. So, like, even in the legal context, somebody could apply to our firm, put a law firm that might be very prominent in, you know, India, Bangladesh, or China, and we wouldn't know what it is here. So, just a sentence or a short descriptor of the firm. So that would be just what I would add on top of what's been said, is from the resume drafting perspective, to figure out the norm in your local Canadian industry of what it should look like and what information should go in it.
Thank you for that. And Ada?
Yeah, definitely that reaching out. I think there's that aspect of finding the help that you need. And I think what I've noticed definitely with the newcomers that we've worked with is that resiliency and that ability to keep going at it. And I think a job search can be anything from right away to up to a year, depending on the type of professional you're in. And this is true for immigrants and Canadians. And I think the resiliency to keep going, to find the help that you need, knowing that it is here in Canada, we have a great network of support. And then not being shy to reach out and connect with people. And you'll find, I think, I tend to be an optimist about this, but there are a lot of newcomers here in Canada who are willing to support, to mentor, to provide that advice one-to-one. And I think this is something that's valuable as well. And kind of not assuming that nobody really wants to help. I think people do, and that's a really important message. So that resiliency piece now, especially in the midst of this pandemic, is I think something that people who are successful will have.
Okay, thank you for that, Ada. I'm looking at the time. We're already 5 minutes over, and we'd like our attendees to visit the booths at the virtual fair. So I'm going to ask everyone to send us your questions, info@canadianimmigrant.ca, and we will pass them on to the speakers. So let us know if you want to reach out to all speakers or just specific speakers, and we will forward them on to them. So thank you so much for being here, Gina, Bruce, Stephen, and Ada. And thank you to everyone who's submitted your questions as well. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Bank of Montreal, our platinum sponsors, Immigration Consultants of Canada Regulatory Council, our gold sponsors, British Council IELTS, and the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Our silver sponsor, Fair Grant Writing, Chatham Kent Living CK, and Osgood Hall Law School at York University, and all of our exhibitors. So please feel free to rejoin the fair and chat with our exhibitors who will be here to help you. Our next session will be at noon EST, Banking 101, presented by the Bank of Montreal. So once again, the fair is open all day until 4 p.m. EST. And just to add, if you're chatting with the exhibitor, kindly give them a few minutes to connect, as many folks are chatting at the same time. So we're going to sign off. This is me, Ramya Ramanathan, the editor of Canadian Immigrant, and I'm with my colleague, Laura Jackman. And once again, thank you to all the speakers. We really appreciate you making time to be here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.